Hello guys, Ancient Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco and welcome to my channel, and today we have the Adrenalin 24.1.1 review. And as I say in all my videos, 24 is the year 2024, 1 is the month January, and the other one is the first revision on that same month, so the first revision of January. And guys, I can tell you right away that these drivers bring so many new things. So many new things, so don't skip the video because some of them are really interesting. Like today's sponsor. Today's video sponsor is GVG Mode, bringing you all the software deals you need, like Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2021 with a new Windows 11 design, and even Windows Server 2022. For all of these, you can use my SKG discount code for 25% off, getting a Windows 10 serial key for only $16. Then use the key on your Windows settings and you'll have an activated system. And well, in case you're confused, I made the 24.1.1 video before, but those were the preview drivers, the drivers that would become the real 24.1.1. So basically these ones are those drivers with further improvements and of course new features. But as usual, let's start with the release notes. Firstly, we have new feature highlights with new game support for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth and Tekken 8. We also have the new product support with the AMD Radeon RX 7600 XT, a card that was released yesterday, and we have now AMD Fluid Motion Frames AFMF. And this is not FSR3 frame generation, this is basically frame generation inside the drivers that you can use in basically any game. It is not as good as the FSR3 frame generation, obviously, and kind of adds more input latency since you're using it from the driver itself, but it works in every game, or almost every game. Boost FPS up to 97% for a smoother gaming experience by adding frame generation technology to any DirectX 11 and 12 game. AFMF improves performance by adding frame generation technology to the AMD Radeon 700M, RX 6000 and RX 7000 series GPUs for notebook and desktop platforms, up to 97% increase in performance across select titles at 1080p resolution when AMD Fluid Motion Frames AFMF is on upscaled with Fidelity FX Super Resolution 2 at quality mode using software Adrenalin 24.1.1 on the 7600 XT GPU versus when AFMF and FSR2 upscaling are off. And I can tell you right away that these are basically bollocks, okay? So in games where the frame pacing will work properly, or in games where the frame pacing is already working well, so if you look at the frame times, they are basically a flat line. If that happens, AFMF will most likely work wonderfully. And in those games, you will notice indeed a better fluidity, especially if you have a high refresh rate monitor. But it is not real FPS and you won't feel a real increase. Imagine, for example, you have 70 FPS, then you go to 140 or something like that with AFMF. You will definitely feel a smoother experience once again, but at the same time it won't feel as smooth as getting real in-game engine 140 FPS, okay? And some other issues like shimmering and so on that come from AFMF because once again the software is generating fake frames based on the previous and the next ones. AFMF also preserves image quality by dynamically disabling frame generation during fast visual motion. And this is what doesn't really make much sense because when you're using Fluid Motion Frames, it will disable itself when you do some really fast mouse movements, for example, changing the camera from one side to another. I was testing AFMF, for example, in PalWorld, and it was working quite okay, but as soon as I changed the camera, I would feel the game was less smooth because once again, well, I was moving the camera fast and AFMF was disabling itself. That's why they brought the hypr-rx with AFMF as well, because in games that support hypr-rx, you actually have hypr-rx using AFMF and Radeon Boost at the same time. And Radeon Boost actually does the opposite that AFMF does. AFMF disables itself with fast movement, and Radeon Boost only enables itself with fast movement. And that's why they complement themselves so well, and that's why hypr-rx uses both at the same time, which actually works pretty well, but I'll show you on the follow-up video. And now we have a new thing called AMD Video Upscaling, advanced video upscale algorithm to improve video playback image quality for the Radeon RX 7000 desktop series GPUs. AMD Video Upscaling can be enabled within the Graphics tab to enjoy improved sharpness and clarity for DirectX applications such as Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge and Media Player with resolution support up to 4K. For more instructions on how to enable upscaling, please ensure that your version of the AMD software is up to date and learn more here. And video upscaling is actually one of those things that people were asking for because NVIDIA already has it for like several months and AMD still didn't have it. Now they do, and you can use it on your browser, you can use it on your media player. I don't see myself using it a lot, but for some specific scenarios it might be actually nice. But there's more. We have additional video improvements as well, with Content Adaptive Machine Learning text detection has been updated to support up to 4K gaming for even greater clarity, with various encoding support within AMD software including AGVC, AVC and AV1 codecs have undergone additional optimizations to improve video encode quality. AMD continues to work with partners to implement enhancements in third-party apps, more updates to follow in the upcoming drivers. So we not only have the video enhancements with upscaling, but we also have a better codec for better recording and especially for better streaming, which is always a plus. So you can upscale videos now. And if you are recording or streaming, well, the video codec improvement is actually pretty nice, as shown by AMD in the last event, where they shown some examples of the codec improvement versus the 23.7.1 drivers. Versus the 23.7.1 drivers, I don't know exactly why those drivers, but the thing is, the codecs improved definitely, and that's always a plus. I'm very glad to see AMD improving the points that they were lacking at. We also have a new thing that came from the AFMF preview drivers that wasn't presented on the previous preview drivers that I made, so the 23.40.01.10, which is the AMD Smart Technology tab, access to the suite of great A+A features for one convenient location to maximize the power of your AMD powered system. This is basically a tab where you have all those things like AMD Smart Access Video, AMD Smart Access Memory, and there was also a thing that when direct storage was actually shown for the first time, AMD said that they were gonna release something called AMD Smart Storage or something like that, but they never talked about that for a single second after that announcement. Somehow it would be nice to have the AMD Smart Access Storage. Maybe it will come in the future. Who knows? We have another new thing as well with the AMD Assistant that automatically enable or disable AMD software-based features on various situations for improved performance or battery life. And now we have additional OS feature support. Support for hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling has been expanded to the Radeon RX 7600 series GPUs on Windows 11 version 22.2 and newer. And this is also a nice thing once again because hardware-accelerated GPU scheduling was not supported before by the RX 7600 series. It was supported for every single card of the 7000 series, but the 7600 series weren't really supported. But at the same time, the performance difference was basically null besides VR and some other specific applications like emulation. But once again, since the 7600 XT was released, now we have HAGs for both the 7600 and 7600 XT. What to know? AMD Fluid Motion Frames AFMF. AFMF can be enabled for any DirectX 11 and 12 titles using hypr-rx. AFMF may introduce additional latency to games and may not offer the optimal experience for fast-paced competitive titles. AFMF is recommended to be combined with AMD Radeon anti-lag to reduce the in-game latency while maintaining a minimum in-game FPS of 60. And while AFMF actually enables anti-lag by default, as soon as you enable AFMF, anti-lag gets enabled as well. What I would like to know about is Anti-Lag Plus that AMD presented some months ago. We actually had one or two drivers with that, and then we stopped hearing about it, and AMD didn't say a single word about Anti-Lag Plus after those Counter-Strike 2 bans and so on. I hope to hear from them soon regarding this. AFMF must be manually enabled in the per-game settings for certain fast-paced competitive titles, even if AFMF was already enabled globally. Gamers are free to enable AFMF in these titles based on their preference and gameplay style. And this is actually a good thing because as soon as you enable AFMF globally or you enable hypr-rx, well, AFMF is not good for competitive titles once again because it disables itself with fast movement. And in competitive titles, one of the most important things is the fast movement. You need to move the camera fast in Counter-Strike 2, in Valorant, in first-person shooters. You actually need those fast camera movements, and with AFMF disabling itself, it is not really optimal. So AMD did a good thing here, which is if you enable it globally, it still won't be enabled in some games, and I believe Counter-Strike 2, Valorant and so on are some of those games where AFMF needs to be enabled manually, and that's actually a good thing. Also, AFMF may be enabled or disabled on the fly by using the default hotkey Alt-Shift-G, which is actually a very nice thing. AFMF currently requires the game to be played in full screen mode with VSync disabled. For better compatibility with borderless full screen titles, Windows 11 users can enable the optimizations for windowed games. And for a better visual experience, AFMF is recommended to be used with variable refresh rate. Users can check AFMF's frame generation status using the AMD Software Adrenalin Edition in-game overlay, which is actually one of the bummers that I have so far, which is frame generation on the AMD side. Well, FSR3 frame generation will be read with, for example, Riva Tunner statistics server and so on, so that will read the FSR3 frame generation. But as soon as you enable the Fluid Motion Frames, you can't read the FPS with anything else, at least from what I know. So if you want to see your real FPS numbers after the frame generation, you actually need to enable the AMD overlay, because if you put them side by side, the MS Afterburner and the AMD overlay will show you the frames with Fluid Motion Frames, and the Riva Turner Statistics Server or MS Afterburner will show you the frames without the Fluid Motion Frames. It might seem confusing, but it really isn't. You just need to use the Radeon overlay to watch the real FPS if you're using AFMF. Still a bummer in my opinion. For system setups using hybrid graphics, such as laptops featuring an integrated and a discrete GPU, AFMF must be supported on the displaying GPU to be activated. Stay tuned for future enhancements and improvements coming to hypr-rx with AFMF, focusing on elevating image quality, smoothness and latency. And now AMD Video Upscaling. AMD Video Upscaling can be enabled for most DirectX 11 applications to improve image quality. However, certain applications such as Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge may require an additional step to activate AMD Video Upscaling. For Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge, Media Foundation for Clear must be enabled. The setting can be configured in the browser settings, accessed through Chrome //flags/ or Edge 2 points, I don't know how to say in English, //flags/ blah blah blah, doesn't really matter. Users have the flexibility to adjust the level of sharpness added by AMD Video Upscaling using the slider located with the Graphics tab. And to finalize the What's New section, we have AMD Technical Preview Driver. Users had the opportunity to get an early look at the AFMF through the AMD Technical Preview Drivers and provide their feedback to build and refine the future. The feedback received through our online communities and AMD Bug Report tool helped create a more stable experience for AFMF in the AMD Software Adrenalin Edition 24.1.1, and yes, AFMF was improved. Users looking for updates of future AMD Technical Preview Drivers can subscribe to our newsletter. And then boys, those were some really long release notes. And it was just the highlights and what's new section. Let's go to the fixed issues. As for the fixed issues, they're basically the same as the preview drivers, starting with performance drop may be observed in some DirectML workloads, also fixed compared to the 23.12.1 drivers, intermittent gray screen after driver upgrade with certain monitors such as the Nexus NX EDG27 4K, damn that was a long name, on Radeon RX 7000 series GPUs, also nice. Graphics API metric may show as NA in certain UWP applications. Heavy stuttering may be experienced while playing Warframe and loading into a new area or starting a mission, also fixed, very nice actually. Black artifacts may be observed in smoke effects while playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Black texture flickering may be observed while playing Starfield on some AMD graphics products such as the Radeon RX 5600 XT. And the last one is intermittent install failure may be observed when using the factory reset setting. Yes, because the factory reset option is back. As for the known issues, we still have some sadly, but at least AMD acknowledges them and will fix them ASAP. I hope. And the first one is Deathloop may experience an extended loading time on some AMD graphics products such as the Radeon RX 6900 XT, resolution targeted for the 24.2.1 drivers. And this is actually a thing that I like about some AMD drivers, because they actually tell us where the resolution is targeted for. They did this like half a year ago, and now they seem to be doing this again, and it is actually very nice to see in which drivers they're aiming to fix those issues. Very nice AMD. Dead Space may experience an application crash after enabling RTAO on some AMD graphics products such as the Radeon RX 6800. Excessive stuttering may be experienced when first playing a match in Overwatch 2, resolution targeted for the 24.2.1 drivers as well, nice. Audio may intermittently become out of sync with video when recording from the AMD software Adrenalin edition using AV1 codec, resolution targeted for Quarter 2. Well, we still have to wait a bit. Oculus Rift S may display with a green tint on AMD Radeon RX 7000 series GPUs, which is a bummer for VR players. And after system reboot, Parsec host application may experience a crash on some AMD graphics products as well, such as the Radeon RX 7900 XTX, resolution targeted for the 24.2.1 drivers. During Microsoft Team meetings, the camera may intermittently display looped footage on some AMD graphics products such as the AMD Ryzen 7 7840U processor, which is basically a mobile processor. And the last one, finally, is on selected hybrid graphics configurations, AFMF may be inaccurately displayed or absent, particularly in systems where one of the devices lacks support for AFMF, also resolution targeted for the 24.2.1 drivers. And guys, I have to tell you that this is one of the biggest release notes parts that I've ever reviewed with the driver videos. This is actually very long. Damn. Anyway, now we have some more things on the important notes, talking about the AMD Link that they ceased support to the AMD Link and so on. And then we have one thing saying that for users who previously installed an AMD software preview driver, running the AMD Cleanup utility is recommended before installing this new driver, AMD Cleanup utility or DDU. And the last one is AMD Software Adrenalin Edition 24.1.1 will now automatically clear previously installed drivers located in the C/AMD folder to save space. And now finally, to the goods and the bads, the things that I found with these drivers and what we have actually new. So, the good thing is that we do have better performance in some games, like we did have with the preview drivers like Alan Wake and some others. The performance did increase. It's a good thing actually. We have AFMF, Fluid Motion Frames, and they work better than before, but once again, I'll do a follow-up video to this one showing you that. We also have the option to use AFMF inside the hypr-rx feature, and like I told you before, it uses hypr-rx plus Radeon Boost in supported games, which is, well, they kind of complement each other because AFMF disables itself with fast movement, and Radeon Boost enables itself with fast movement. So when AFMF gets disabled, Radeon Boost gets enabled, and they kind of compensate the fluidity loss with fluidity gain by Radeon Boost, which actually works better than I expected. We also have now 30, 60, 90 and 120 FPS recording. We don't need to use a third-party software like on the Nvidia side, I believe. You can just use it on your AMD software and you can record at 90 and 120 FPS now. I tested it, it works very well. All you have to do though is increase a lot the video bitrate because you are recording, you're going from 60 to 120 FPS, so you have double the data to fill in. So yeah, you'll need a much higher video bitrate in order to have decent quality at 90 or 120 FPS, but besides that, works great. We also have the Smart Technology tab that displays the several AMD Smart Access something that we do have, like the Smart Access Video, Smart Access Memory and so on. Then we have the AMD Assistant that auto-enables things based on your usage. Then we have hardware accelerated GPU scheduling for the RX 7600 series. And of course we have a better codec, improved codec, video quality for recording and streaming, and video upscaling that you have to enable in the graphics. You go to the gaming, then graphics, and then you have the video upscaling option in that same menu. It is as easy as it can be. Although, like AMD said, for Google Chrome you need some additional steps, but it works. As for the bad points, the only things that I actually found was that there are some games where the stutters are a bit more aggressive compared to the previous drivers. The games will stutter a bit more for the shader cache loading. After loading the shader cache, it will be smooth and it will generally have more FPS. But before loading the shader cache, generally they'll kind of stutter a bit more, and that's a bad point in my opinion. Another bad point is that some people claim to have increased their power draw, that these drivers have increased their power draw in idle mode. I myself didn't have this issue. I tested the 24.1.1, and while idling I could go as low as 7 watts full idle. It usually went from 7 to 14 watts. Recording the video and watching a video on YouTube at the same time, it would go around 60 watts, and it would go down to 50 watts while only watching the video, so it was completely fine, more or less on par with what we had before, a 4K video. 50 watts of power draw on the 7900 XTX, completely normal. But yeah, those were basically the only bad points that I found. And remember what I told you about the performance being better? Let's start by testing the RX 7900 XTX.
The payphone was ringing. Somehow I knew the call was for me. Hello?
Alan Wake?
Yes.
Do you know who I am?
No? Who is this?
We'll get to that later. There are spies all over. Shadows.
A sense of deja vu washed over me. Had I had this conversation before?
Alan, listen to me carefully. Caldera Street.
Net construction is a dead industry, Chief Pretorius. Those jobs aren't coming back. But Reliant Medical, Archmite, and Satori Mills are dedicated to Gagarin. We were just hoping Gagarin could show the same...
What? You look like the welcoming committee or something?
I heard there's a bunch of old abandoned mines in your town.
As you saw, the 24.1.1 drivers did improve the performance in some games, Alan Wake being one of them, Alan Wake 2, compared to the 23.12.1 drivers, the last official ones. It was a nice upgrade actually in terms of performance, and some other games got performance improvements as well. But what about, for example, testing the previous preview drivers, the 24.1 preview versus the released ones now? Let's test it a bit with the RX 6700.
We've been working. Great.
I'm losing you. Hello? Hello?
And well guys, as you saw, the performance did not increase from the preview drivers to the official ones. Basically we have the same driver with some more features on the Radeon software. It seems to be the case. Maybe there are some improvements on some specific games, but from what I tested, it is exactly the same driver, but with new features to the AMD software. And well guys, that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video. Leave your comment in the comment section with your experience, if these drivers are better for you or they're worse, because sometimes we actually have newer drivers that are worse than the previous ones. And that does not happen only on the AMD side, it happens on the Nvidia and it happens on the Intel side as well. It happens a lot more than it should actually, but it does happen. Thank you very much for watching guys. See you in the comment section and in the next video. Thanks.